So when we talk about the opportunities in digital retailing, there's a tremendous diversity of opinions on what that means. So let's go through. So Max Steckler, CDK Global. Greg McGivney, now working with Dealer Inspire. He's the Chief Operating Officer, right, Greg? Yes. And has been with Cars.com for a long time. Tim Cox from Car Now, Amit from Roadster, Andrew from Moto Insight, Jessica from Cox, and Joe from Trade Pending. We have a lot to cover in a short period of time, but it's an exciting conversation. So there's products out on the market today that are using the word digital retailing. And I don't know about you, is anybody confused what that means? So whether it's Roadster or whether it's CDK Connected Store, or whether it's Car Now with their Up Now and Buy Now product, Online Shopper from Dealer Inspire, and we did a research report on that. A new player, which you may have not heard of Moto Insight before, but a Canadian success story coming into the US at the OEM level, delivering e-commerce solutions or digital retailing for Canada. And of course, Cox with Accelerate. It was a big splash at NADA this year. Also interesting, the first time that a digital retailing tool was not just on the dealer's website. So the fact that on AutoTrader and KBB, a consumer can have access to tools to pencil their deal or purchase their car on a third-party site versus only on a dealer's site. So we have a lot to cover. The first thing I'd like to do, and for our panelists here who have the mics, one of them you hold down the button to turn it on, and the other one is a switch to turn it on, so get them all primed up. Tim, I'm going to start with you. We're just going to work down. When you go into a dealership and saying, hey, we have a digital retailing solution, how are you describing what your product strategy is? And we just have to keep brief in general, you know. When you look at it, is it a full end-to-end? Is it a super lead? How are you defining digital retailing today?
Well, it is like a lot of the products on the panel. It is a full end-to-end. Our background, like I'm sure others, was I was behind the desk for many years. And, you know, dealers, general managers, general sales managers, instead of, you know, for years I had people and vendors come in talking about, VDP clicks and impressions, and we talk about selling cars. So that's our pitch. The bottom line is how many cars did it sell? So that's what we do. And we talk about casting a wider net. Whether the customer's coming in, whether that's a chat, a text, a messenger, a marketplace, but having that same experience end to end, whether it's a chat, through the digital retailing solution, or even inside the store. That way the customer can have that same experience. So that's what we're pitching. And that plus one dashboard with multiple products has worked very well. And we're seeing the ROI from it. You know, we've got dealers that come in and have no digital retailing solution. For example, like Mike Gruber here, that at one point was selling one a day, and then replacing. So there's many different things, but it needs to be wrapped around and customized to that dealer to make an impact. Because to deliver one solution and not being able to customize that around the dealer's process, each dealership in this room represented has a different process. Who am I to come in? So that's what we're pitching, being able to customize and wrap that around your process. Because I'm not smarter than you, right?
Okay, great.
And that's what we're pitching.
Joe, Trade Pending is powering some of the trade-in tools for digital retailing. How are you seeing your company's role in completing this online purchase?
Trades are really unique. So it's not very often you get to trade a depreciating asset for an instantly also depreciating asset. I can't go to the shoe store and be like, hey, I've got 200 miles on these babies, mostly indoors. What can you give me for the next? So it's a tenuous transaction, right? Trades are really potentially a point of friction for an online retail, especially because you're doing it kind of sight unseen, like you're self-reporting as a consumer. For me, digital retailing and what I'm seeing with our partners is a really good engagement point. It's a place for a certain customer to go to get what they want out of the consumer experience of online car shopping. I think the danger is that there's a presumption that maybe it's a fix-all. Dealers are running to digital retail to be like, hey, it's going to be a mega deal or a mega lead that lands in my lap. And so we're going to force consumers through this funnel. So the danger, I think, is that in an era where we have all these tools that allow consumers to self-curate online, now we're going backwards and saying, hey, we're going to cram them through this funnel that we want to make our jobs easier, which potentially leads to lower engagement and more abandonment. Us specifically, I feel like we do a really good job of kind of displaying trades in a kind of an agnostic, more informational way that allows guys like CarNow and Dealer Inspire to piece together this online retail transaction in a really agnostic and low friction way, and deliver ultimately a message to the consumer that's one that doesn't put the consumer in a box, that allows them to continue to move through that process.
Greg?
Yeah, so working with Trade Pending, when Joe designed the product, Joe was a dealer previous to being now a software developer, and has really kind of had a foot in both camps. One, to have the empathy and the understanding from the dealer side of the equation and understanding how that handoff has to be made. And then on the second side is really balancing that consumer experience and making sure that the investment that the consumer makes as they work their way through the journey then provides kind of an equal footing for the dealer to then carry that transaction through to the sale of the car.
Great. Amit, how are you defining it for dealers who say, hey, Roadster is a digital retailing solution? What does that mean from your perspective?
Yeah, I think I think one of the things that we do to not necessarily separate ourselves, but just to get a little bit more clear, is we don't necessarily define ourselves as digital retailing. We're completely happy to be in the bucket, but we use the term, and it's not to be kitschy or anything like that, but we use the term omni-channel commerce. And I think that's because we primarily still focus on the fact that digital retailing oftentimes gets categorized as things on a website, and then somebody at home in their PJs kind of shooting off and buying a car. And we fundamentally understand, I think everyone does too, that people are still going in-store and online, back and forth, multiple times throughout the process. So given that, we don't necessarily state that this is about car sales per se. Reality is, as an ex-OEM guy, I know that the digital, the retail technology partner isn't necessarily the person that's going to drive sales per se. Sales is going to come from market conditions, incentives, dealer motivations, what trip the OEM might be throwing out this month, yada, 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 right? The reality is we're about engagement, efficiency, and customer satisfaction. If we can get more people engaged in what you're doing, if we can make this process not only more efficient for the customer, but for the dealers, and we have happy people doing that all the way across the board, at the end of the day, that will capture more individuals. And if it ends up selling more cars, great. Reality is nobody sells more cars when the SAR goes from 18 down to 16, down to 14, et cetera, et cetera. So more cars is not necessarily our foothold, but it's really about efficiency, engagement, and customer satisfaction.
Right. Max, CDK, Connected Store, I saw it at NADA. We talked about how complex an online transaction is. How are you explaining Connected Store to the dealers? What's the value proposition? What's getting them excited about it?
Yeah, well, the first thing that we tend to focus on is to get a real clear understanding of how the dealer is thinking about it, because in our minds, it's not about here is a product, put this product in place, right? So if we talk to the dealer and he's saying, look, what I'm comfortable with is that I want to up the quality of the leads that are coming through so I can create more of the beginning of the transaction so I can close at higher rates, then that's great, right? And we'll configure the products in order to fulfill it in that way. But we have other dealers that are more focused on saying, look, what I'm looking for is to increase the efficiency that's happening within my store. And with all the products that are here, with everybody sitting here, right, there's this monumental opportunity for us to be able to leverage these tools, not just for what happens online, but also what's happening actually in the store. Because I think one of the toughest problems is the churn rate that happens in the store with the employees and trying to get them productive as soon as possible. And these tools actually provide really great bridges across that entire thing. For the dealers that say, what I want to do is I want to Amazonify my car sales, what we say to them is, okay, well, let's sit down and spend the time to understand what you really mean by that. Because when you, being a DMS company in our core, when you really talk about trying to move all of your transactions online, the complexity that comes into the documents and how you do the calculations and how you combine together the F&I with the documents that might be state-led or might be OEM-led, et cetera, are fairly complicated. And I think they're kind of all emerging for all of us right now, right? Right. So we sort of talk about it that way. But we've got one other angle where we do talk with manufacturers. And this is a key element for us. And one of the things that we continue to talk about, which is you want to create experiences for consumers. And I don't think you can create an experience that's only an OEM experience, or excuse me, a dealer experience. People interact with the OEM. How does digital retailing interface with that? And then how does that interact with what the dealer is doing? And one of the strategy elements that we've been doing is trying to extract out a lot of the smarts of the DMS, like the calculation, like the taxes and the fees, and the elements that everybody here at the table really needs in order to process through into F&I, and then to open those up so that everybody can take advantage of them. And so we're dedicated to kind of bringing that openness out, and we're doing a lot of work to enable that.
Great. Andrew?
So for us, digital retailing means far more than just e-commerce or selling online. Our most successful customers on Modal Commerce use digital retailing, use Modal Commerce beyond just thinking about the online context. They use it to start deals in store that allow customers to finish them at home. They use Modal Commerce to start deals that came off of a lead off of AutoTrader, let's say. Modal Commerce and what digital retailing, the term for us is really focused around is a customer experience solution, allowing the customer to shop when they want, how they want, in whatever channel that they want, whether that starts online, starts in store, and crosses over. We use the word omni-channel as well, and we really think that when you...
No, you can't use that word anymore. No, that's already been taken. It was a first come, first served thing.
When we look at industries across the spectrum, that's the kind of customer experience that customers expect and demand, and we're just replicating that in automotive.
Great. Jessica.
Yes, so not omni-channel, we don't use the word omni-channel, but similar concepts. I mean, we talk about being fully integrated from a digital retailing and really connected retailing standpoint. So really being able to connect the online experience to the in-store experience and driving that based on what the consumer, what the customer is looking for at that time. So obviously spanning Accelerate across dealer websites as well as AutoTrader and Kelley Blue Book enables us to get at scale in front of consumers. I spent my whole career in marketing, and so as marketers we know consistency and experience and driving repetition and kind of that consistent message really makes a difference. So enabling that experience and like you asked, we know that the majority of people now want to start their process online. They still want to go into the dealership and test drive the car. They still want to see somebody face-to-face to kind of sign the deal. But enabling end-to-end for as much or as little as the consumer is looking for in a world like we're in today with transparency and expectations of being able to kind of see that deal. And what we've seen and kind of what we really talk about with our clients is that enabling that transparency, enabling that really stellar consumer experience makes a huge difference because those customers then feel confident and feel comfortable in what they're purchasing. And a happier, more confident customer really ends up a win-win on both sides.
As I look at the marketplace today, and this is just a sampling of the companies who claim to offer some type of seamless or frictionless or some other, phrase. Had an interesting conversation with the OEM, and I don't talk to a lot of OEM folks. I think they're afraid of me, but or I call them out or something like that. So something happens. But this one OEM, we're talking about digital retailing, and I ended up sharing the story about Cox Accelerate. And I said, I just got back from NADA, and there was a really big change because people have been thinking about digital retailing as being on the dealer's website. And now those tools are going to be off the dealer's website. And this guy got a little freaked out. Here's what he said. I don't want Cox controlling my brand. No, it wasn't Cox. It was the concept that the OEM feels, this one OEM, that as a luxury brand, we can't be using the same digital retailing experience that you would buy a Kia with as a Mercedes. And I never really thought of that. Okay, my reaction was, well, whatever's easy for the customer, and they're like, no, we have a brand. That's our brand. So maybe I would just prohibit my dealers from being on Cox properties. And I'm like, no, that's kind of backwards. That horse has already left the barn. Okay, we know that third-party classifieds are an optimal place to connect consumers with inventory, but it is complicated. So I'm just going to open up this conversation. I'll let two people kind of jump in on some of these questions. Do you feel, panel, do you feel that the OEMs are going to mandate a single digital retailing solution, for their franchise channel? And if that's the case, what happens to the experience at third-party classified level, where theoretically on every VDP, there's a different tool which would kind of violate the go to cars.com, it's easy and simple to shop, does anybody want to tackle that? What do you feel like, if you had to look ahead, what are the OEMs going to do?
First of all, I'd love the contact information from that person. Let's start there. No, and I'll quick and can pass it along. It's interesting because it's not the feedback that we've been getting so far. And, we've thought through a lot of these options and continue to. And I think that part of what we see with digital retailing holistically is, although, we've been in the business of building this for a long time now, but it's still new. And so much of it has to do with how, at the dealer level, the experience flows through, right? And how much a dealer is promoting and marketing and explaining what digital retailing is for them. So I think that that's going to span across the experiences completely and at every level, really. And I think that that's where a brand experience definitely comes into play as well. When we look at this connected retail environment, it's meant to be a framework, and it's meant to be something that creates a consistent experience. It should be a really great experience, but enables consumers right now, they're still learning how to do this. So we have to teach them first. And I think it's still new, so we'll see what happens, but there's a lot of opportunity to work together and partner.
John Paul, one more person. What do you think the direction of the OEMs are going to be?
We actually first started our business working with OEMs. So Modal Commerce enabled the first automaker globally to deliver an entirely online sale off of a Tier 1 website. But what we realized is that the sale was still happening by the dealership. This was for Genesis in the Canadian marketplace, actually. But what we realized was that digital retailing at scale really needs to happen at the dealership level, and that's where we extended our product down to individual dealerships now. But I use an analogy in travel. So when you look at travel, there's Expedia, Priceline, Travelocity. The airlines and the hotels probably don't love those sites, but they exist. They offer consumers independent, places to shop. At the same time, though, the airlines and automaker, whether you're a national chain or a regional B&B, they still all have their same, equally competing transaction capabilities today. And that's really where we see and how we see the market evolving. I think marketplaces are going to move from leads through to transactions, and automakers and dealerships need to make the investments to ensure that their own experiences are competitive.
Okay. One of the things that's driving me crazy about digital retailing is we're still using the ADF specification that was written in 2000. And you think about this, we have all this rich information, trade-in information, loan discovery information, car comparisons, whether these tools save it for the consumer to go back, pick it up. And so when someone engages with digital retailing, there's so much information. My fear is we need a completely different CRM platform. mean, we really need to rethink how to handle this lead. I don't think it's a super lead. I think it's something more complex. So I'd love for our panelists to, pick this ball up. And of course, if the audience has any opinions on this, for sure, we want to get your feedback. But it seems that the current CRM platforms and how we change data are the biggest roadblock on getting a seamless customer experience online or in the dealership. Anybody want to pick up that one? Comments on that? Max, go ahead.
Sure. I guess one of the questions that we ask ourselves is, can you reproduce whatever the consumer did in that CRM application? And that's probably one of the things that's most terrifying about this, because if you're actually going to putting a deal together, which is what we consider these, and you think of all the data that has to go into it, right? And there's the basic data you'll see in the upfront of purchasing the vehicle and how much it costs, et cetera. And then you've got the trade data you got to get in. But then if you're really putting in, let's say, subvented rates that are against a lease, and you're putting in F&I products, and you're putting the taxability against it, there's so many dimensions. And so the thing that we keep looking at is, okay, we have to make it so that any other third party can reproduce that deal down to the penny. So that means you have to give them all of that information. And when you pack that up together, it's well past a super lead. I mean, that payload is full of, it is nuclear information that's sitting inside of that, right? So you have to do something where it's available via APIs within the marketplace, so that I think it's not about building a new CRM. I think it's about the CRM vendors coming together with the digital retailing vendors and saying, okay, we need to be able to have the integrations between us. We need to define what those specs are and make it where it's easy to push that data back and forth.
Yeah, one of the things that I never really thought about, I was out visiting a dealer and we talked about this, and here was the question: do you have a different workflow for your digital retailing leads? And you know what? As I was looking around, there's a lot of dealers who don't. And here's the reason why: because the leads are coming in like a website lead. And somebody could have gone through, done the trade, play 3 or 4 steps, let's say it's a 5-step process, and your stupid autoresponder is saying, thank you for your vehicle purchase request. Do you have a trade? And yeah, it's crazy. So I don't know how we're going to solve this, but it seems, as Max said, CRMs from an API perspective have been kind of behind the times. I don't know if anybody else has been frustrated with getting API access to CRM data. But it also seems like the CRM companies never thought of a world that they would need an open set of APIs. As Max said, if CDK is really good at calculating the exact price and calculating all the legal stuff, hey, maybe a third-party package picks that up through API and then uses that information to do a deal. We have a lot of work to do in the CRM world. Would you agree? How about somebody here who's, go ahead.
Who would you say is closest in the CRM world to getting to where they interface with these digital retailers?
That's a great question. Anybody want to pick up that ball? Amit, obviously you guys work with a lot of players. So are you working, is any one CRM provider have a more robust API where you could, or you're talking about having a more interactive conversation?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we constantly describe ourselves as a Swiss arms dealer in this ecosystem, right? We're here to play with website providers, CRMs, DMSs, captives, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to go back to that. You said that the CRMs are, listen, the CRMs are there to do one function, or a primary function of handling that customer and the relationship. I think the linchpin in this whole thing is what you talked about earlier, and I saw someone kind of nodding their head. It's about process. If the dealership's not willing to change a process, if you get your lead from Toyota.com, or you get your lead from Edmunds, or you get your lead from your dealer website, you should have a little bit of a different approach just based on that lead. Maybe drop that person in your CRM, Google them, and see if it's your neighbor, and then respond. And if a dealer's not willing to start doing that, and I get it, because dealers are putting out fires, they're in a very busy environment, then it doesn't really matter what solution you utilize or what the API provides at a CRM level. I'll say this, after our product goes live at a dealership, and we fundamentally have to have a couple people in a dealership for 2 full days of training on a software platform. Every phone call afterwards is probably skewed 25 to 30% about software and 70% about process. And that's okay, because that's actually iteration. That's the change that's being made there. When it comes to the providers, I mean, we have more robust APIs, and I'll just say it as it is. It's DealerSocket has a robust API for us, but eLeads and Vin Solutions also have APIs in process with us at this time. And then I don't know who's in the room and who's not. I mean, again, no skin in these games, but I saw Dealer-Centric or Drive-Centric. If I'm getting that name wrong, I apologize. But I saw them at NADA and Digital Deal, and I think they've got a pretty cool solution also. So from our perspective, we work with them all. As long as the information's going back and forth in there. The backup in all of this is, unfortunately and fortunately, is using our platforms, our back-end tools, so that you can get the most robust information. And sure, that's not clean because you got to bring up another dashboard. But look, at the end of the day, if we're looking to solve for making this more convenient for the customers, we got to put in a little extra work.
Tim, let me ask you a question, because not only were you on fire this morning, I figured you'd be on fire tonight as well.
Well,
That's right. So one of the big kind of challenges, one of my clients who said, I can't be here, but please ask this question. It's like, is this all bullshit? Because how many deals are actually being done, on, using these tools? Meaning, if a dealer's selling 500 cars, how many deals are going through? Now, I've gotten different answers from different people, but Tim, I'd like your perspective. Bullshit. Is the tools today doing 5%, touching 10%, touching 20, 30%, or is it 1 to 2%?
again, it's back, like a lot of you said, it's back to the dealership's process. And if that dealership has a process, for example, we have a Nissan store in Tampa that got so involved in the process, started seeing it work, went even to traditional advertising, billboards, and then developed a process within that store. There's another dealer, Mike Gruber, I don't know if he's in here, VP of operations for Paul Miller Group. There was a time where he was, and of course everything fluctuates, to where he was selling one a day through our tool. So there's another Stevie, I think, from Tampa Honda, the John Williams Group. You know, and again, guys, it's very important, because I still think like a dealer. There's so many years. That's what the great thing about this is, because you can talk to dealers. We're all going to tell you how pretty we are, you know, and these are all great solutions. But really get in and talk to these dealers and find out best practices, because I'm sure that someone could sell a car with any of these tools, right? We saw depending on the configuration of the deal, sometimes a 30% increase over and above our core product, which our core product was chat, text, Facebook Messenger. And when we added that, literally some stores, depending on the configuration, would jump almost 30%.
In lead opportunities. In
lead opportunity, but at the same time, those were closing. So for example, we were even seeing, depending on some OEMs, obviously, you know, you have to, they require you to give the information up front to unlock savings, obviously to establish that one-on-one relationship, so we're compliant. But when we found we asked for that later in the process, those were closing between 30 and 40%. So, you know, when we go into a store, no matter what product you buy from Car Now, Buy Now, Up Now, and soon to be some other things, stay tuned. You know, it's about increase. If we don't go in, if a store's selling 100 cars, and then like you say it all the time, and we go in and, oh, we're crushing it, and you're still selling 100 cars, you didn't do anything.
Right.
You know, you didn't do anything. If you're selling 115 or 120, so that's what we really do, and that's what we're seeing. The dealers like Mike and like several people in here, when they get it, we're seeing huge results. We've got a BMW store, well, I say out west, we are out west now, that send me their source report, you know, where they close 19 out of 19. Well, they've got an amazing VIP process when they get that lead. So again, I think the dealer process is once they grasp it, it is absolutely making an increase. And of course, there's dealers here that will contest to that.
So, Greg, let me ask you a question. One of the one of the bigger pictures, and you've heard me talk about this, is how are we going to know if this digital retailing framework is frustrating consumers or not? Many of you know that we've defined events for Google Analytics, for dealership websites, and all of the website providers in the industry today supports that spec. But in the back of my mind, I'm saying, do website providers have an inherent edge against, say, a Roadster, that you could theoretically have a more tightly integrated website and digital retailing experience than a bolt-on? What's your thoughts, Greg, on does CDK in a delivering of a digital retailing solution on a CDK platform, Cox, on a dealer.com, is there a competitive edge, and what do you see it, or is it, hey, you see a world where any tool could be running on a Dealer Inspire site?
So I think there is an advantage, and it's more because we have insights. So we'll be able to look through Google Analytics and look at that pathing journey and then find out where those breakpoints are and then where we have to improve on that user experience. And we'll constantly look at A/B testing, and we'll start to make adjustments to that and really try to help that consumer find that journey through and get to the transaction. And by looking at that, that just makes that website experience that much better, and then hopefully increases the yield for that effort.
Right.
Yeah, Brian, I think when you're measuring the success, one thing that's really interesting is to think about it from an attribution perspective. Because when we look at the number of leads that come directly from the tool, we then will go and look at all the rest of the leads that come through where somebody interacted with the payment builder tool. And what you find is there's like 2 to 4x leads that are coming after somebody worked through a bunch of different payments, but then says, okay, I'm going to submit a lead on this vehicle, but it might not be one with the payments. So making sure, and I don't think it necessarily has to be the website and the provider, it's just you've got to have Google Analytics across the whole thing, and you have to look at all of that engagement. It's
Great.
going to be important.
Jessica?
I think, yeah, to add to that, the consistent experience makes a difference, being able to track and then optimize. And also, I think we're seeing similar results where we'll see people start penciling deals and start engaging, and then the traditional leads go up as well. We're seeing leads go up on both sides and much higher conversion rates, of course, like these guys were saying too. But if the more integrated you are, the more you're able to give a consumer the experience they're looking for. So if they want to toggle between, they have this consistent kind of experience overall. And as they're getting up to speed with what digital retailing really means, as we all are also getting up to speed in how we're operating inside the dealership as well as online, that more integrated experience allows them, we've seen, to go kind of between the two while we're kind of gaining momentum in the marketplace.
Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit. Amit, I want to ask you a question about opportunities. There are people here in this room who, are not using some type of digital retailing tool. What do you think the biggest opportunity is? For someone who's either here or later watching this video, what do you think the number one opportunity for dealers that you encourage them, you got to evolve, and here's my number one reason why.
I think it's just demand from a customer. We don't even use the term disruption, even though the company is a San Francisco-based company. It's not the disruptor, it's realistic progression. And what that means is that all of us in this room shop this way for everything else we do in our lives. How is it we can't demand this of the places where we go to work every single day? So whoever you use, whether or not it's us or any one of our partners up here, you got to get to the point where you're giving your customer this. Think about this really fast. Today, as we sit here, we probably have less time than we did 2 years ago, than we did 5 years ago, than we did 10 years ago. And the reality is every one of us have the exact same amount of time every single day. So if you don't start respecting that and giving that back to your customer, which is the whole point of this thing, is put my kids to bed at 10 o'clock tonight and then I want to buy a car, or they want to go through the process. If you don't give your customers the ability to do that rather than submitting a piece of information on a website, then I think we're just all kind of missing the boat in regards to what shopping actually means, right? We're trying to convert this environment where you traditionally saw info and submitted info into a place where I conduct commerce.
So aside from the consumer experience, obviously one of the opportunities is this is something the consumers want and enjoy. What are the opportunities for the dealer?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest opportunities is data and automation. So when you look across industries, everybody here, most of you have probably bought something online, and when you leave something in your shopping cart on an e-commerce website and you're thinking about that product, and then you leave, invariably you've probably gotten an email or a follow-up with a coupon code perhaps, just giving you that nudge to complete that transaction. So shopping cart abandonment email marketing. That's that commonplace and table stakes in every other retail sector, right? But very few dealers actually have the capability to execute on that. And when you think about all of the touch points, not just capturing a lead, but all of the touch points we're able to capture in digital retailing with the digital shopping cart that is moving between online and in store and piecing all of that data together, it provides tremendous depth for a marketer. And so, we integrate with Google e-commerce in terms of their Google Analytics suite, where we're tracking data down to from time of start of the process all the way to checkout of a shopping cart, average shopping cart size, shopping cart mix. There's a lot of powerful tools that other retail sectors have been taking advantage of for years, and it's time for automotive marketers to do the same.
Someone else, what's a big benefit for dealers?
Well, I think that with any buzzword like attribution or transparency.
Don't be picking on my
buzzword.
Brian. Don't be picking on my buzzword.
Attribution's the best. That's the best buzzword out there today. Sorry. True attribution. And what is that? Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Yep. Last year I was riding with a director of digital marketing for a group out of Kentucky. And we were doing the Bourbon Trail, but that's besides the point. And he said to me, he said to me, listen, I've been doing digital retailing for years. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, I get a consumer on a WebEx, I build the deal sheet in front of them, I explain to them how their trade value relates to their overall payment, what do they want to put down, where they want their payment. I do it right in front of them, and then we put that car in a flatbed truck and send it to them. I don't need to pay somebody to do that for me. And I think there's we have, all of us, whether you're an auto or any other business, you have this inclination to cut a check for a silver bullet. But to Tim's point, it's all about the process that you build around it. Homeboy was really comfortable and doing really well with a $15 subscription to WebEx every month in digital retailing, building out a deal sheet in front of the customer. And to me, it's all about transparency, buzzword, attribution, buzzword, and the process that you build around that. And I think that is the real opportunity. You're not going to cut a check for $400 a month and be able to say, I'm digital retailing, I've changed my business, we don't even have to have a showroom anymore. That's not going to happen. By the time that we are 100% digital retailing, if that ever happens, I'll be sending my self-driving car out at night to Uber for me while I sleep.
And boy, that could be next week.
That'd be a really nice passive source of income. But
So again, let's switch a little bit. Challenges. Go ahead.
So one of the hesitations with some of the people I work with is when you put out a digital retailing solution, you're one step closer to a fixed price model because one price model.
Right.
So the hesitation that a lot of us have is we don't get that shot. First of all, we don't get a shot to make a relationship with the customer. We don't get to find the flexibility. We don't get to find where the place is to make our money. When we're doing it online, it's like, okay, they're going to come and do the best thing they can do there. And it's not, as you guys know, it's not just about the price of the car or the trade. There's a lot of moving levers there. So what your solutions provide where we can move those levers in the background so that we can maximize.
So let me just repeat that general thing. He has questions. That's what he said. He had questions. No, the problem is control. Has anybody said I'm not doing digital retailing because we're going to lose control of the sale? Yeah. One of the challenges I find is who's the second or third highest paid person in the dealership? The F&I manager. And if you're going to put these products out for a consumer to self-select, self-explore, doesn't that kind of change their role, their salary, their pay plan? So your question is a good one, is that we're afraid of digital retailing because we don't really have that ability to develop a relationship with the consumer, have flexibility. We're really not sure how to read it. Allowing the consumer to buy and select what they want scares the hell out of us. So how can we be more flexible? Tim?
You know, it's a great question. And I can remember 8 years ago putting an extra monitor in all my F&I managers' offices. Why? So they could watch video on why they need gap insurance, why they need an extended service contract if I'm slammed on a Saturday and I got to get cars out, right? And they're here. As a matter of fact, Tampa Honda, Wesley Chapel Honda, now the Lexus store, we did a case study. When you show consumers early in the process, that's why most of you in here spiff your salespeople on F&I, do we not? When we show it earlier in the process, there was a 20, and I think you guys will all agree, we found, at least in this one case study, in their dealer group was a 25% increase. I showed this to another dealer principal, very successful 14-store dealer principal, and he said, when I first showed it to him, he's like, well, great. Now you're taking away the only thing we're making money on, which is my F&I. So I don't want to give that away too. The thing is, with every one of these products up here, on the back end, if you want to hold $800 on an extended service contract, a 1.5 a rate, whatever it is, you can do that. In fact, I would argue because of the case study, the F&I managers would enjoy it because they're getting not only, we talk about the same flow, whether it's online through the dealership, right? We're showing them that video on why they need the extended service contract before they even get into the store. So again, facts trump feelings. And facts are, at least in those case studies that we've done, the F&I process, the F&I on the back end was 25% higher.
Yeah, so
But somebody on the desk that's been desking for 10, 15 years, look at a guy and know whether he can hold a rate on him. I can't do that through a computer. I can't.
What do you mean looking at a guy and knowing you
I
can?
look at a customer, I can read the customer in 5, 10 minutes and tell you whether I'm going to be able to hold rate on him or not. You can't do that through a computer. How do you do that?
Well, with our tool, and again, I'm very impressive tools across the table. What I believe with our tool, some of the successes is we have it's live assisted, like right now. So for example, you can interject with a customer, talk to that customer immediately. It immediately, once that payment or that question is asked from a customer, it will ping whatever the general manager wants, 5 or 15 different managers in that store to their cell phone. Bang, somebody's online now. Because here, the reason we did that, because I'm a car guy. I'm never at my daggum desk. I'm appraising a car, I'm handling a heat case, I'm all over the place. So we send it to the phone. That way, if I'm on the block buying 3 cars at the auction, I can look in and move my finger and work the deal. That establishes that relationship, that one-on-one relationship, and it's all reciprocal. I want you to think about that for a second. I want you to think about everybody in this room. How many cars did your dealer group sell last year? Think about this. Last year, that at least one manager in the store didn't touch. 0. Customer cannot get into your store and buy a car without seeing an F&I manager. Right? Talking to a pre-owned manager about their something. But yet, we're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars in this room for people to come to our website. They're walking around unassisted and they're leaving. What would happen if a manager can click one button and say, hey, listen, I'm the manager here at ABC Toyota. How can I serve you? You think that's going to increase that product? Absolutely, it's going to increase. So that's why we've seen some of the successes.
So obviously, not seeing these tools as a set it, forget it, completely automated, interjecting live assistance. Does anybody want to talk about a specific dealer or case study that shows that the F&I gross profit isn't going down? Meaning as people self-select, as the tools put rates out there that the dealer wants to hold, over a larger pool, are we seeing stable back-end gross?
We're consistently seeing specific examples that are seeing higher end, but we also, and similar, I guess, to the 25%, our studies have shown consumers are 63% more likely to buy the F&I products when they're looking online. And it goes back to, this is the thing we were the most worried about, right? I mean, this is where you're making your money. But it's the trust. So you also talked about building a relationship with the consumer. Right now, what consumers need is that transparency to build trust, to build the relationship. So the 63% number is so much higher than we thought it would be. When they can sit there, watch the videos, online or in the store, again, that connected piece is really important, but being able to take in that information, digest it, not after 3 hours of sitting in the dealership already, they're more willing to take it in, and they're actually buying more at that point. And so that's been converting a lot higher for us, and I think that that's one of the biggest proof points for us that's showing we're able to keep the margins, which is a big difference.
Amit?
Yeah, I think I think you shot us a note, and doing our homework. If you've ever gone through a Roadster demo, we actually cite a Cox study, and we cite it. We let them know we stole it from people with more money than us. But we basically tell them, hey, listen, there's a fantastic study that says the earlier and often you show F&I, the more opportunities you are for a customer to take advantage of it. I think we all agree with that theory because it makes common sense outside of this building too, right? But we have a very specific study. We did it with Mark Miller Subaru in Salt Lake City. At the time, it's one of our first dealer partners. We weren't going into the DMS, so we didn't have access to that data. So he basically let us unpack his statement, and he let us unpack his DMS for about 3 months prior to going live. Cool, got the data. 3 months after going live, we were able to extrapolate this. And the story isn't a massive increase, it's the fact that we maintained, which I think is the realistic nature of what we all do up here, right? They sold, I should say, 45% F&I the traditional way. Buy a car, sit in the box, and get F&I sold to you. And 45% of the time the customer said yes. Good. They went online with our product, and we show videos, and we show brochures, and we just sprinkle it in throughout the process intelligently. And customers bought it 40% of the time. So if you just simply look at those two numbers and you walk away 45 to 40, oh, maybe not so good. But no, not necessarily the case, because these are potentially incremental customers that bought F&I. Because it is that person who bought a vehicle at 10:30 at night that didn't have the opportunity to sit in front of an F&I manager because not many stores are open at 10:30 at night, who said, yeah, I'll go ahead and pick up that vehicle service contract or that prepaid maintenance. These guys got to a point where when they were selling vehicles online, and maybe it's 10 cars, 20 cars, 30 cars, you're now starting to pick up 40% F&I penetration on those vehicles. That's true incrementality, because those are people that weren't going to come into your store and buy these cars. So now you're starting to pick up a little bit more F&I. So we saw, again, I think our point is not that we're going to shoot the moon and have this massive increase in F&I. We just want to protect what you guys are already doing a really good job with in the dealership by bringing this stuff up front.
Let me open up to the floor. What is a challenge of moving towards a digital retailing solution in your mind? Kevin?
I can tell you hands down the biggest challenge where you can help is, first, you hit the nail on the head that you have to market and educate the consumer on how to use digital retailing. You can install it all day long, but once you market it, you'll see the engagement jump up significantly. It's about improving the consumer experience and saving time, and then they show up at the dealership, and what happens? Step one, the road to the sale, right back to 3 to 4 hour delivery. We are pounding our heads in frustration and working on this. That is our biggest obstacle, and I think the reality is with dealers, they're resisting it. I mean, they don't want to embrace what the consumers want. The truth is the control left a long time ago.
Right.
It really did. So if you can help us in that transition, identifying that consumer coming in the door, where did they leave off in the process so that we can pick up, that's our biggest challenge.
Great.
I think that's the core integration and changing the operations. And then, like you said, from the marketing standpoint, 70% of people want to buy from a dealer that offers online process. We know that. So you not only have to offer it, but you have to talk about it. You have to tell people about it. On the Auto Trader side, we're going to go out with a national big marketing campaign at the end of Q3 to start talking about Accelerate. So right now we're building enough inventory that's Accelerate enabled on the site with the intent to do just that at scale. Try to educate car shoppers on what it means, what it's like, get ready, because this is a new process, and then be able to tie these things together, because we really strongly believe that that's the key, is getting consumers understanding it while we're building from the dealer side as well.
Other
I'll
roadblocks.
just throw
or
one more comment.
Yes.
You said help us do this, right? It's happening now, right? And I can only speak for our product because I go through it every day, but you literally have somebody who did 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps. They walk into your store. The training component is just give us 30 seconds, go into the back end tool and see if this customer's in there. If they are, You literally find that customer, and the same user experience they saw online, you turn that screen around, you bring out that iPad, you show them a kiosk, and it's exactly what they did from home. So that's bridging that frictionless, environment that we keep talking about. It's not that difficult, and it's actually happening now. The part that I have a lot of empathy for you is it is difficult to get us to not go back to road to the sale. But every time we go into a store and we start training these folks and we spend a couple days there, the first time it happens while we're in store and someone sees that I can pick this up and take them through this process, then you got some people that have become advocates of it. And the reality is it's not only saving customers time, we got to make sure that we're saving you guys time, because a car deal is a drain on the process when I have to look at the whites of somebody's eyes for 5 hours to buy something from them.
Right. So other problems, go ahead.
I would just say, Brian Allen with Galpin Motors. I find oddly the challenge is more ourselves as dealers, and I'll just say myself, because where I've seen dealers go into digital retailing, it hasn't been 100% commitment. And on the website, on a SRP or a VDP, it'll say, click here to get internet price, click here to buy now, click here, call for best price. And it just, if I were
eight call to action buttons, right?
Yeah, so we've been late to the party at Galpin, and we're getting ready to partner with a major omni-channel firm. And it's a scary ride, because we've been relatively successful doing things the old school way a long time. But I think where I've had to convey to the balance of our executive team is we have to realize that the relationship that we try to own with the customer doesn't start up front. And what I think we've been able to finally prove is our customers want the relationship really after they've bought the car. That's when we need to nurture them for their friends, family, and repeat business. Up front, I don't think we have the credibility to say, hey, you want to get married? Let's go, let's do this. Right. So they're a little bit more open to the digital retailing solution, I believe, than I think most dealers would think. But you've got to be all in on it, because if we're doing it the old school way and digital retailing at the same time, customer confusion is going to leave in a stalemate or result in a stalemate that you don't see the customer. So,
and that's a good point.
That's our struggle.
That's a great point, because I feel that way just personally, is that when somebody drives by a Toyota dealership and they've never bought a Toyota, they've never done business, and there's 3 or 4 Toyota dealerships in town, they're really looking, initially, I'm going to find the car that I need, and then a relationship starts on how I'm treated and how that process goes. Meaning I think it's natural for a consumer to go to a VDP and see one button. That's a very interesting conversation that could be another whole day, why there's 4 or 5 call to action buttons on every VDP, and in no other industry is it like that. Some people say, well, there's so many buttons is because we can't buy the car online, so we kind of gimmick the customer to think that there's 4 or 5 choices, but it's the same stupid autoresponder they get no matter what button they or form they fill out. So we really have to take it seriously. How about one more? What is one of the biggest challenges to getting digital retailing in your dealership, if you haven't embraced it today? No, you already said too many things. Come on. Let's here we go. Come on. Hold on. Wait for the mic.
So for us, it's not so much, it's the decisions at the top. And so the way they see it is, regardless, in Texas, you need a wet signature. So you have to go to the dealership anyway. So for the decision makers at the top, they're like, regardless, they're going to come to the store if we have what they need, the price is right, and we've done our process. So it's the challenge to overcome that, well, how do we prove value that they were going to come to fill out and fulfill this online, deal that they did. And so true e-commerce would be where they purchased it online and it confirmed it and they were picking up the car. That's how I would see it. So the challenge for me is trying to convince, the guy who writes the checks, or my owner, that, this would be the best bet for him to kind of generate more traffic and to provide that solution for consumers. Because consumers will engage with it if you put it there. That's just in my experience of what I see.
And John, would the fact that many of these folks, when they turn on their digital retailing solution, see a net increase of leads be a reason for them to?
For us, I would say yes, because as somebody said earlier, that it kind of brings that, hey, you left this in our cart. Like, would you like to? You kind of re-engage that consumer. Like, you left this in the cart. You entice them with some kind of incentive, and so that's a great approach. That's marketing, and so it gives us that at bat one more time.
Yep.
But for us, at that level, it's a very scary business or a scary avenue to go down, and so. That's kind of the challenge. It's the wet signature. They still have to come into the dealership anyway.
So one general comment that people have said, and I don't see it as much, but I've heard this over and over again. If dealers don't get their shit together, then Amazon's going to come in and just completely blow up the car dealer's franchise model. If we don't evolve, if we're going to continue to be this painful. Obviously, I'm not a legal expert on franchise law, but it's very interesting that more and more people are saying, if we don't change, we're on the verge of a kind of a major revolt, a major, upheaval in the way cars are bought. For the panel, I mean, do we see, Max, how about you? Do you see a day where we have to worry about Amazon getting into our business, or is it something completely different?
So they're right in our backyard, and we talk a lot to them, and I can tell you that we don't have to worry about that today. We don't have to worry about a month from now, a year from now. But I can tell you that what they say is we're patient and in it for the long game. If and when the franchise laws crack, we're in 100%. But until that time frame, we're not in the U.S. Right? Okay. They definitely are within Europe. My take on it is that. This is so much about the experience that you give to the consumer. And if you give a good experience to the consumer and you give up front and you give them a certain level of transparency, you're going to get more of those customers to go with you versus somebody else. And it doesn't mean that you have to do the transaction 100% online, because the laws in Texas aren't going to change anytime soon. If they do, great. But if not, I think you can still have a great digital retailing experience. I think the thing to worry about, just looking in a crystal ball, would be how subscriptions for vehicles really take off within the United States. Because if you take a combination of digital retailing and subscriptions, especially if they're coming from the manufacturer, then I think you're going to change a lot of the dynamics that are going on within the United States, and that's going to impact the SAR. And that's not that far off.
And that's why we have Kevin doing a presentation about the Weiler Fastlane business model, and it's very, very fascinating. Here's one thing that someone said. If digital retailing really takes off, there is no way that the OEM is going to allow stores to select to use it or not for this one reason. It would create an unfair advantage. Meaning, think about this. I've heard stories of a BMW dealer implementing a more transparent retail process starts sucking, sales out of the competing person. It's a competitive advantage. Anybody want to address that one? If it's going to be that great, can an OEM survive with allowing a third of their stores to have an online retailing solution and the others not? Do you see that it could be a completely different experience, and then the franchise PMAs start to break down even more, that the consumer self-selects the easiest way to buy that BMW? Joe?
I think that no consumer today, and this is like curse of knowledge in our business, no consumer today wakes up, needs a car, and says, boy, I can't wait to be digitally retailed today. Right? They answer to a call to action or a consumer experience on your website that resonates with them. Also, I don't think any consumer says, I can't wait to hammer out a car deal tonight. Right? Because even in a digital retailing platform, it's still complicated and it involves a lot of steps. So, while you're watching, Bloodline on Netflix and drinking wine, you might value your trade or figure out what your payments might be. Then you're picking out your car maybe the next night or while you're eating lunch between shifts at work or whatever. We look at it so linearly. I think, because we're all in it. But what we see from a consumer behavior standpoint, and we're kind of in a unique position where we see people doing that tenuous transaction of like trying to figure out how much is this piece of junk in my driveway worth before I go figure out what my payments are going to be on whatever the next piece of junk is. I'm not a car guy, can you tell? Sorry. But it's not quite as A/B as we think. So is there a danger from an OEM standpoint? Maybe years down the line, but I think today we're just trying to figure out what connects with the consumer, and how do we, to John Watt's point, how do we build a UI online and a smooth bridge, to Kevin Fry's point, to get them to complete that process once we actually get them in front of us. And to me, it's all about allaying fear, right? It's all about how they feel when they're engaging with that particular call to action, and when they get to the store, how do they feel? Which is what it's always been about, right? That's what we do.
All right, so what I want to do, because we have about 10 or 15 minutes before we transition to one last exciting thing before the wine. How about asking our panel some questions? What would you like? We have a question. Blake, go ahead.
Yes. Where is the data? How many customers actually go through and complete the digital retailing process? I have not heard any numbers yet.
Okay. I'll be happy to take that. Of those leads that we're getting, as far you're going from the beginning. You mean Blake?
I have heard no data. No data.
Beginning to end.
Complete the whole process.
Right now, we're seeing that number between 4% and 5%.
I don't believe it.
Okay. Okay. But
it's not the value as a dealer. The value is not only in completing the process from start to finish. It's from for us. I don't have that many customers that come in and tell me what their minimum down payment, what their maximum down payment would be, what their payment range would be, and all the models that they would be interested in at first greeting on the showroom floor. Digital retailing has allowed us to gather that information and then interact with the customer, knowing what their tolerances and their range are. So even if they don't convert and complete the whole transaction, they've let us see behind the curtain. So now we have talking points, we have ways to reconnect, we have re-engagement opportunities that we never had before. So I don't know that that's the only calculation that matters, in my opinion.
Andrew?
Yeah, I'll add to that. We have different, and this is where for dealers, you got to make it your own philosophy. On the one end, Precision Hyundai, one of our customers, doesn't believe in selling online, but they believe in saving customers time. And so they market Hyundai Express on their website as, save time on your transaction. So you can't actually complete the entire process with Precision Hyundai, but you can get, 90% of the way there, right? And when you walk in the store, you still have to do a wet signature. But the customer isn't spending hours working on that deal. On the other end of the spectrum, we do have dealerships that are selling entirely online and delivering the car to their door. So on our Genesis deployment last year, they sold 600 cars entirely online. Not huge numbers, small, right? In context. But it really depends on what your philosophy is. I think over time, the proportion of customers that get comfortable buying online entirely will increase, right? But right now, it's a spectrum of different approaches.
Brian, if I may.
Yeah.
Every company up here, every single vendor that you pay every month, if they're a good vendor, which all these guys are, they have one job. That's to differentiate your store. That's what you tell your owner. You have got to, we all know the numbers. People are going to shop 4.7 websites, they're going to go into 1.4, right? How does that vendor, whoever it may be, whether it's a website, Blake, or how does Fusion Zone differentiate from another, or how does dealers, what do they do? What do you do to differentiate yourself? That's our job. And I would argue that if you cast a wider net, not everybody's going to want to go soup to nuts, period. But at the same time, if you cast a wider net, you're getting more leads in, and then therefore you're going to be closed. It's just facts. Then if you have a tool like VistaDash, You like how I did
Yeah,
that?
thank you, Tim. That was wonderful.
See that?
Thank you,
You
Tim.
can measure it because, as a matter of fact, your buddy, Jim Ott, told me, Tim, if you can't measure it, it doesn't matter. So we all need to be measured. And if you're dealing with a vendor that doesn't like or shades away from being measured, measure us, measure these guys, measure everyone. And if you can measure it and you're at X, if you're at 200 leads and you go to 250 and you're selling of that 250, even if only 4% are going through the entire deal, whether they buy or not, that number's going to go. And guess what? You're going to sell more cars. That's our job, to serve you and allow you to sell more automobiles.
Great.
I'm actually
We
just
have a
gonna-
question in the back. Oh, Peter, I was waiting when Peter was going to. He snuck in. He's been writing questions. Our favorite Automotive Analytics and Attribution Summit questionnaire. Go ahead.
So I'm the digital retailing director for Warren Henry. I've been digital retailing cars since 2014, since Make My Deal was a thing before Cox dissolved it, I guess. I think digital
improved it, Peter. Improved.
So, two things. Digital retailing has to be defined, and that's our biggest problem, right? To Max's point, and it's the paperwork. I don't think digital retailing matters until I don't have to print the paperwork. It has to be done properly. It has to be done not online, but digitally. I think that's the number one focus point we need to have at the dealership for our process to get better, so we can save more money and save a lot of time. That's the most important part. The second part of that equation is going to be all of you guys have to get together with a dealer track or one of the F&I people, right? And you have to be able to set up an asynchronous way to manage rates and residuals and everything else for the programs from the OEMs. Until that happens, it will not be real. I'll tell you why. I've spent 3 years, in the last 3 years, messing around with Accelerate, my version of Accelerate, of subtracting MSRP from internet price from vehicle cost to try to make my payments show up properly on AutoTrader, to match my website, to then match that on TrueCar, to then match that on Edmunds, to then match that on Cars.com. That is how we have to manage, right? So it's ridiculous until you guys leverage that relationship that they will never give us to be able to do this. So that's the biggest problem. Digital retailing does not have to happen online. That is not the goal here. It has to be done digitally. Now we get to a point where, as he said, 5%. My Range Rover clients, they should never go to my website. I'll give you guys a secret though. If you find a way to digitally retail with my retentive clients, forget the conquest. I have 71% because of market conditions, retentive clients at my dealership. Get with Auto Alert, send them a digital retailing system that they can dispatch out to now go ahead, get the same payment for the same car, something you might like. Now we're talking about growth in sales on a customer that was never in market, and that's a real product that would help us and sell more money today. F&I is going to be a problem forever because of the transparency with the products, but it doesn't matter, they're residualized. It's a dollar figure, 900 minus the cost, you put that's residualized and put it on the payment. The customers just want payments. That's all we got to do.
So, Peter, at NADA, CDK announced Fortellis, and you, if you follow me on social media, I thought that was the biggest news of NADA. The idea of creating a framework of APIs that CDK, for example, could expose for the first time an accurate pricing tool, an accurate, scheduling tool, and other people now have opened it up. Max, let me direct this to you. What Peter's saying, it's a complete pain in the ass to merchandise my cars over 5 or 6 different third-party websites, let alone my own, let alone the equity mining tool who's sending out yet another calculation on an offer that I may or may not want. And my dealership deals with 7 different F&I product companies, and 2 of them are still in the Stone Ages. Max, what's the vision for Fortellis to really provide a new way, a framework to allow software developers to fix some of these problems?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you bringing that up. So the important thing to know is that Fortellis is something that's completely independent of CDK software. And that's one of the things that a lot of people got a bit confused about, because the first thing you think is, okay, if there's this framework that I can get APIs and I can code to, then it must be giving me access into CDK applications and CDK systems. We are absolutely going to be one of the companies that puts services into Fortellis, just like the ones you're talking about, being able to get into our calc engine, our quoting engine, being able to insert into F&I, et cetera. We're going to be doing that, but Fortellis really is a framework that's going to allow for everybody sitting at this table and everybody in this room to be able to maybe create your own AI API that's an instantaneous pricing API that could be called to tell you, how you should price a vehicle if you want it to sell within 14 days. It could be a little small company that creates it, puts it into the framework, and then everybody in the industry can grab it and mash it up with the rest of the applications that they're building. So we have this vision that ultimately at some point for TELUS and this network, we partnered with Google to create the framework, is something that actually spins out from CDK, and it's something that's completely independent from that. But in order for us to have the right to get the marketplace to pay attention to it, we actually need to put a number of our services into it and allow for companies to be able to hit it on a pay-by-the-drink basis. If any of these companies here want to be able to use our calc engine, which is the same one that drives our desking and the same one that's driving our F&I system to make sure it all matches, then they can do that, and they can call into it. We have another API that we call MVS, Merchandisable Vehicle Service, and it's actually the API that we use to vend out all the information that goes on a VDP. So that same thing is the same thing we use to vend into our connected store products. So we make sure connected store always has the exact same information.
Does it integrate with DealerTrack?
What's that?
Does it integrate with DealerTrack? That's the problem, it doesn't. And I know it doesn't, which is why Connected Store cannot support any of my brands, and only Infinity is stuck with it. And we still don't have a working product with Connected Store because of the DealerTrack farce that's taking place right now.
Right, and so for TELUS is one conversation. I think the conversation that you're talking about is the symptom of the problem, which is that we all have these positions that we staked out in the marketplace, right? And DealerTrack has a position they've staked out for all the right reasons competitively, right? Route 1 has a position that they've staked out, right? CRM vendors as well, they've got a position, and I think that part of what we're attempting to do here is to say to the market, and a lot of this is responding to what Brian has said in a lot of the conferences, which is, would you guys all just get along, right? You open your systems up, but there's really serious business ramifications to doing those things, right? And that's the part that I think the whole industry needs to keep moving forward with. And you're right. So Infinity and Nissan are captive to DealerTrack, and hats off that they've got that, right? That's very powerful for them, right? But Route 1 has got captives that DealerTrack doesn't have.
Well, this is the problem. I'm paying for Connected Store through my CDK site, which I'm the only dealer that's not on it, by the way. Because of that reason, Infinity bought into that, saying we could digitally retail, and they put all these dealers on it, and it doesn't work. And they've been trying to push it on us since 2015. So that should not happen. The same way Route 1 will not only, I have to turn on Route 1 at all my other Chevy and, CDJR and Ford stores, because they would not let me push the information from VIN Solutions a certain way. So now I have to have Route 1 and DealerTrack to get payments on my website, DealerTrack, and to actually get the information to the lender, Route 1, because Ford and Toyota are part owners on it.
You're absolutely 100% right, and it's got to get solved.
So we'll be able to solve that over wine tonight. I'm absolutely sure. Listen, I wanted to open up this panel because this conference is unique. The fact that we have CEOs, CTOs, Chief Operating Officers, innovators, marketers, all in one place. As you take advantage of this forum, you will get real answers and straight answers, and you could tell people are passionate about the time that they're wasting. Dealer groups that are here, just updating your websites. Kate and I have talked about this with the Maurice Group. When you have 3 or 4 different website technologies updating monthly specials, pain in the ass. Peter talking about pricing consistency. And then we haven't even touched the addendums and stuff that are on cars that are not disclosed on any third-party portal. There's a lot of work for us to do, but up here are people who are trying their best to move our industry forward. So when you have an opportunity to talk to all of them, ask them the questions that are relevant to your store. Ask them how you can, more collaboratively work with their companies to move the conversation forward. John, like with your dealer principal, what would you do? These are the times to make true advantage of this unique opportunity. I do believe this, that the stores and every dealer and dealer principal here or general manager, I do believe this, if you follow what Kevin was saying, a process that's transparent online and it's seamless when they come in, that will be a differentiator. And you will increase your market share, absolutely. And while the OEMs are allowing some people to be ignorant, and you have the opportunity to be proactive, we haven't even talked about the marketing, but you're going to see something in a few minutes from Denise that's going to blow your mind. But what happens if a dealer, a Ford dealer in a market, really has a true seamless and frictionless? Do you understand what that marketing sounds like? Think about the radio, think about the television, think about the online. We can educate, but the dealer that crushes it, I believe, will have a short-term competitive edge until the OEMs realize that they can't have that disruption within the franchise channel. So would you please give our panelists a big round of applause? Thank you. Thank you.